This video is brought to you by Squarespace. Stick around to the end of the video for a special offer they're making available through my channel. Gamers, happy earnings call season. It's the week where we all have to know what terms like MAU and ROI and KFC mean. The last one means Kentucky Fried Chicken, by the way. You're welcome. It's a week when financial comptrollers become divine prognosticators, all of us gazing up at them as they spout boring-ass financial jargon so that we can wait for them to stop talking and be like, look, are you gonna make another F-Zero game or not? Unlike my waistline, the video games industry is contracting, and this week there was plenty of red ink spilled across the pages of big tech and publishers as they reorient themselves in this post-lockdown high-inflation era. Don't worry if you don't have time to sit through all those boring annual meetings or read those boring annual reports. I got the top lines ready for you right here, right now. Get your calculators ready, people, because this week is all about the numbers. Here comes the news. Man, things are not going great for old mate Mark Zuckerberg. While the world unites to condemn how shit Instagram has become, and as their ad business takes a huge kick in the nuts owing to Apple's app policy changes, their metaverse business is bleeding cash faster than a knocked over fire hydrant. Luckily, the Zuck knows just how to fix things, raising the price on the Oculus headset, or whatever it is they're calling it these days. The announcement came last week direct from Facebook HQ, which said that the standalone VR headset unit would increase in price by $100, an increase of around 25% in one fell swoop. On one level, this is a real head scratcher because the Zuck has pinned the hopes and dreams of his aging social media platform on a pivot to the metaverse, which he sees as propped up by VR, and yet at the same time he's raising the cost of entry into that metaverse future. The flip side is that the Oculus headset is crazy successful as a product. The VR side of gaming isn't going particularly well, but social and commercial use cases are going through the roof, and the Oculus headset is easily the best on the market if you're looking for an untethered device. Of course, cost of production also factors into this, which is something that Facebook themselves have pointed out, but it does feel like this is a move that Facebook feels that they can kind of get away with, given how well this hardware is selling, a stark contrast to the success of their non-hardware related VR initiatives. Another company pinning big hopes on VR is Sony, and this week they gave us some more details about the upcoming PSVR 2, which everyone is low-key certain will drop sometime next year, probably early next year. We've already seen the design and the specs, but now we know a little bit more about the user interface and features. For example, much like the Oculus headset, the PSVR 2 will support a see-through view. Using cameras mounted on the headset, you'll be able to enable a view of the outside world without having to take your headset off. It also comes with a broadcast mode, which, if you're streaming, superimposes an image of yourself playing, so long as you have the PS5 camera plugged in and pointed at you. Finally, you can also expect a cinematic mode, allowing you to play non-VR games and watch media in a simulated VR cinema. It does sound kind of dumb, but I've done it before and it's actually pretty cool. The other hardware tidbit is that Backbone have released an official licensed mobile control adapter. So I actually have a Backbone and I use this when I'm playing games on GeForce Now. It's actually a really fantastic controller, easily the best one I've used, and I've used a bunch of these now. The PlayStation variant doesn't have any design changes, it's just a reskin of their existing product, but it's a nice reskin because it looks all PS5-y, and I really want it, even though I have absolutely no use for it. This is intended to be used when streaming PlayStation games through either local remote play or through PS Plus cloud streaming offerings. And since we don't have any PlayStation cloud streaming here in Australia yet, this is sadly not something I need in my life. But hey, maybe you do, and yeah, I can vouch for this. This is a good product, so enjoy. Alright, so we've spoken about Sony's hardware, let's maybe have a chat about their bottom line. It's earnings call season, where all the big video game overlords descend from on high to report just how much money they extracted from us. The last few years have been a bumper crop as the pandemic kept people inside with nothing else to do other than binge watch Tiger King and play Animal Crossing. Damn, that was a real time travel trip, wasn't it? Can you believe that was like 2.5 years ago now? My god. Anyway, the good times appear to be over for video games, or at least the heady days of outsized party time profits. Sony announced a 37% decline in Q1 profits, a 26% reduction in software unit sales, and a 16% reduction in their sales forecasts. The usual suspects were pointed to, namely supply chain issues, games delayed due to COVID, and a general decrease in demand owing to the world re-emerging from 2 years of lockdowns. Sony was not alone in this performance. Xbox 2 posted their financial results and they paint a similar picture. Overall, Xbox performance was down 7% year on year, with hardware down 11% and software down 6%. Obviously, Xbox is facing a rough year on the software front, with 0 AAA releases this year owing to Starfield's delay in 2023, but the good news is that next year should be pretty huge for Team Green, owing to the likes of Starfield and Redfall, Stalker 2, and the finalization of the Activision Blizzard deal, bringing the likes of Call of Duty, Overwatch, World of Warcraft, and Candy Crush under Microsoft's unblinking eye. That Activision deal isn't looking quite as plum as it did a few months back, as Activision Blizzard King did their earnings call this week as well, and it was very grim reading indeed. Overall profit for the business was down 28% versus the same time last year, but more importantly, monthly active players fell to below 100 million for the first time since 2019. This peaked in Q1 2021 at 150 million monthly active players. So in essence, Activision Blizzard have lost a third of their customers in just 12 months. Much of this can be explained by an underperforming Call of Duty franchise, which is going strong on mobile, but Vanguard well undershot expectations, and Warzone is feeling a little long in the tooth at the moment. This is almost certain to change later this year with the release of not only Modern Warfare 2, but also an updated Warzone 2.0 experience. Activision are betting big on these ones since they've said that they won't be releasing any new Call of Duty games in 2023, but will be delivering premium Call of Duty content in its place. No word yet on what that might be. Coming back to that Microsoft acquisition, you might recall that this isn't a done deal. It needs regulatory approval in a bunch of territories, and that process is happening right now. A part of that process is to seek input from other businesses in the same industry to get their perspective on how a deal like this might affect the landscape. These submissions all remain confidential, except in one territory, Brazil, who are more than happy to air the video game industry's dirty laundry for all to see. God bless them. Thanks to the Brazilians, we got hold of Sony's submission to this process, and it shows just how high in opinion Sony claims to hold of the Call of Duty franchise and the people making it. Quote, according to a 2019 study, the importance of Call of Duty to entertainment in general is indescribable. Call of Duty is so popular that it influences users' choice of console, and its community of loyal users is entrenched enough that even if a competitor had the budget to develop a similar product, it would not be able to rival it. End quote. That is a line from Sony. And Gorilla sitting at the back reading that quote being like, yep, they ain't wrong. Sony would go on to describe the vast resources that Activision pours into this franchise, both in money and manpower, all to paint a picture of a franchise so entrenched that it's unlikely to ever be toppled. The subtext to all of this is Sony sowing seeds of doubt in the minds of regulators, insinuating that this franchise coming under Microsoft's purview borders on some sort of anti-competitive monopoly. But that's a bit of a tough sell coming from Sony, who for the past 3 decades have done absolutely everything in their power to lock down the best non-Nintendo output that Japan has to offer, as well as control most of the fighting game scene, not to mention recent acquisitions like Insomniac, Bungie, Bluepoint, and a lot more. That's all fine, by the way, that's just business, but for Sony to start complaining to regulators that Call of Duty might influence a person's choice of console, that's a little rich. It gets even funnier though when you read Microsoft's response to this, who actually say that Activision Blizzard's games aren't even that good when you really think about it. Now this quote is from Microsoft, mind you ready? Quote, specifically, with respect to Activision Blizzard video games, there is nothing unique about the video games developed and published by Activision Blizzard that is a must-have for rival PC and console video game distributors that could give rise to a foreclosure concern, end quote. Now, I understand why, in the context of a regulatory proceeding, Microsoft might deliberately talk down Activision's games to make the whole acquisition seem less threatening, but saying that there is nothing unique about Activision games and that they're not must-have properties when you just paid $70 billion for them? That is fucking gold, and I look forward to returning to that quote many times in the future. Hey, while we're on the topic of COD, did you guys see that Samoyed skin that Activision totally ripped off? This made it to Twitter earlier this week when artist Sale Lin posted his art that he did back in 2019, placed directly next to an upcoming skin in Call of Duty Vanguard. The similarities are a little striking, to say the least, and outright fucking plagiarism, to say the most. There is absolutely no way in hell that this skin wasn't directly ripped from this dude's art. COD developer Raven seemed to agree and have since scrubbed mention of the skin from all the game's marketing, but are yet to issue an official response or apology to the artist. Hopefully they keep the skin in and pay this dude a boatload of money, but sadly I suspect that's unlikely to happen. Another acquisition to make the headlines recently was Embracer Groups, who managed to gobble up most of Square Enix's Western operations for the absolute steal of $300 million. At the time, even people who don't know shit, like myself, were like, what the fuck? That's basically giving it away for free. What's up with that? We got a little more insight into that price tag this week from Eidos Montreal founder Stefan Dastus, which I've definitely mispronounced, I apologize, who in a wide-ranging interview with GameIndustry.biz provided plenty of color about just how bad things were under Square Enix's leadership. He left the studio before the sale went through, in large part because he could see that the writing was on the wall long ago. Quote, "It was a trajectory that could be predicted. I left because things were missing at head office. Pre-Square Enix, Eidos had a great tradition of development teams, but they don't have a superior knowledge of how to sell their games, and that was quite clear," end quote. He go on to talk about the fact that stuff like Hitman and Deus Ex should have sold a boatload more, but Square Enix have no idea how to properly market them. Quote, "I was losing hope that Square Enix Japan would bring great things to Eidos. I was losing confidence in my headquarters in London. In their annual fiscal reports, Japan always added one or two phrases saying, 'We were disappointed with certain games, they didn't reach our expectations.' And they did that strictly for certain games that were done outside of Japan," end quote. On that crazy low $300 million price tag, Dastus touches on those Square Enix acquisition rumors that have been doing the rounds for a while now. Quote, "If I read between the lines, Square Enix Japan was not as committed as we had initially hoped. And there are rumors, obviously, that with all of these activities of mergers and acquisitions, that Sony would really like to have Square Enix within their wheelhouse. I heard rumors that Sony said they're really interested in Square Enix Tokyo, but not the rest. So I think Matsuda-san put it like a garage sale," end quote. This is, of course, speculation on his part, but he was pretty close to the action, and if he's reporting he heard rumors, and if the actions of Square Enix line up with those rumors, it's not a huge stretch to think that they might be accurate. By the way, he actually does mention in this article that there were serious discussions about resurrecting Legacy of Kain Soul Reaver, but he says that they weren't as strong as Deus Ex or Thief. My heart, it hurts. It hurts real bad. If you're watching this show from Indonesia, how? Aren't all your websites banned now? This is pretty crazy, but this week, citizens of Indonesia lost access to most of the biggest websites and web services on the internet, including Steam. There was a new law passed which required websites to register with some government office, and if they didn't do it by a certain deadline, they'd be blocked. Websites such as Steam, Epic, PayPal, and a boatload of others didn't get their applications in on time, and as a result, access to all of them was suspended until such time as they get their paperwork in. It's papers, please, except instead of getting access to a country, it's getting access to all of the games you've ever purchased on Steam. By the way, Indonesians, you can sidestep this with a VPN, so Godspeed to you. Last week we talked about Ubisoft's very rough week with their 4 cancelled titles, 2 major titles delayed, and a number of warning bells ringing out about the upcoming Skull and Bones. This latest story came in after I'd published that video, and it's a reminder of the other major challenge that Ubisoft is facing, its cultural reckoning. For years now, Ubisoft leadership have been weathering claims of bullying, harassment, or worse, with employees and employee groups doing what they can to get Ubisoft management to act. This was typified in an open letter from Ubisoft employee group A Better Ubisoft, who last year signed an open letter making demands to clean up the Paris-based publisher. The demands included sacking known offenders, a seat at the table when it came to high-level decision-making, a cross-industry framework for better workplace environments, and engagement with lower levels of staff and union representatives. So far, 0 of those demands have been met, and Ubisoft has paid at least one price for that. 25% of the people who signed that letter last year have since left Ubisoft. Now, that's a big number in any context, but it's an especially big number in the world of video games, where it is impossible to get staff right now, and companies are paying massive premiums to keep staff where they are. This sort of talent drain has an impact on the bottom line, both in terms of training costs, but also in losing experienced hands who know how to make games well. Would it have been any different had Ubisoft done a better job of responding to these issues? We'll never know for sure, but it's highly likely yes. Alright, let's do the block that Austin made me do. We're getting another Guild Wars game, probably. Alright, so this story is based on a job posting spotted by toptierlist.net. The posting says that ArenaNet are currently working on an unannounced multiplayer role-playing game for an established online fantasy IP. Does that mean Guild Wars? Probably yes. But does it mean Guild Wars 3? That's less clear. ArenaNet are still servicing Guild Wars 2, having just released an expansion earlier this year, and are gearing up for a Steam release sometime soon-ish. They've also announced that they're working on a 4th expansion for the game, and that one has a long-ass horizon. If ArenaNet are working on the evolution of the Guild Wars franchise, it certainly isn't coming anytime soon. Interestingly, this title is being developed in Unreal Engine 5, the next-gen engine of choice, and it'd be kind of cool to see an MMO running in that, so let's hope it is Guild Wars 3, even though it would probably mean the end of Austin as my editor. He'll just stop turning up to work on launch day, and I'll only be able to reach him via Guild Wars in-game chat. By the way, if you are planning on ever getting into Guild Wars, be sure to check out Austin's YouTube channel. He makes really great stuff, so show him some love. Link below the like button. Quick lightning round to finish off. You know that Nier Automata Easter egg that everyone was super psyched about because they thought it was an undiscovered secret from a 5-year-old game? Turns out it was just a cheeky mod. I know lots of people are bummed about this, but I reckon Yoko would absolutely love it because he loves trolling people. This is very much his style. Evolve is back. Yes, you heard it. I'm not making this shit up. A few weeks ago, the peer-to-peer servers got turned on, and now people are playing Evolve. Nearly as many people as are playing games like Battlefield 2042 and Halo Infinite, which is a testament to how strong Evolve's comeback is, but also how crappy those two AAA games are doing right now. Disco Elysium developer Zaum are working on their next title, and apparently it's going to be sci-fi based. A job posting asks for artists who love sci-fi and video games and who are capable of creating non-Earth environments. Disco Elysium in space? Hell yeah, man. Sign me up, please. And Riot continue work on their unfortunately titled Project L. It's a fighting game featuring League of Legends characters, and it's looking pretty awesome, to be honest. They just confirmed this week that it will be a free-to-play title, unsurprising given the pedigree of Riot, that's generally their style, but also multiverses, which this week had an absolutely gangbusters launch, so much so that you have to wonder if any fighting game will go premium ever again. Except maybe Street Fighter. They can still get away with it. So what got announced or delayed this week? Well, you've heard of Game of the Year. Well, how about Goat of the Year? That's right, Goat Simulator 3 cometh. A sequel so champing at the bit to get out the gates that Goat Simulator 2 never even got the chance to exist. Well before Untitled Goose Game gave us the chance to be a jerk goose, or Stray allowed us to knock shit off high places as a cat, Goat Simulator served up the thrilling fantasy of being a dick goat, running around town and making life miserable for innocent civilians just waiting to be ragdolled under your merciless hoof. Goat Simulator started out as a gag that became a low-key phenomenon, and the sequel, Goat Simulator 3, just got a release date November 17th, exclusive to the Epic Games Store for PC, as well as for Xbox Series and PS5 consoles. Just announced last week is Roller Drama from developer Open Lab Games. This is a visual novel sports management hybrid where you have to manage a roller derby team both on and off the track, controlling and managing them during matches, while gently steering their relationships as they grapple with friendship, heartbreak, and more. This one looks nice. It's a follow-up to the studio's previous game Football Drama, which was doing similar things. Roller Drama doesn't have a release date, but it's definitely on its way to PC at some point. Released last year to solid reviews, Alfred Hitchcock's Vertigo wasn't based on the classic horror flick as much as it was inspired by it. It was a PC exclusive, but it's now headed to PlayStation, Xbox, and Switch on September 27th. Speaking of exclusives, Solar Ash was previously exclusive to the Epic Games Store, but it just got a Steam store page. No word on release for this, except it is confirmed for sometime this year. This one comes from Heart Machine, makers of Hyperlight Drifter, and retains the same neon-drenched, dreamy aesthetic, although this time the action is in 3D, and it's all about that flow state gameplay. I sadly missed this one last year, so I plan to check this one out on my Steam Deck, since it feels like it'd be perfect for that. The survival genre is going from strength to strength right now, and there's no better example of that than Obsidian's Grounded. I played this one back when it first launched in early access, and I was like, okay, this rules. I'm not going to touch any more of this until it's finished. The long wait is nearly over, and this week Obsidian announced that Grounded will ship 1.0 on September 27th, a fantastic window since there isn't a huge amount hitting at the back end of September, early October, so I'm certainly going to be dumping a bunch of hours into this one. Here's an interesting one. Sherlock Holmes The Awakened is getting a remaster. Now, I'm certainly aware of this narrative-led detective series from developer Frogware. I'm assuming there's a decent market for them though, since Frogware keep making them. The Awakened remake promises to be a complete rebuild both visually and narratively, with substantial portions of the game being rewritten to fit it within the broader body of Sherlock games. No release date for this one yet, but you get the feeling it isn't coming anytime before 2024. And finally, I was worried that I might have to give a different game of the Year this year, but thankfully Annapurna Interactive have come in clutch with all the excuse I need to justify a Game of the Year nod for the 4th year straight. That's right. Greatest video game ever made, Outer Wilds, is arriving on next-gen consoles on September 15th. Now, this is a very big deal because the PS4 and Xbox ports of this game kinda sucked. The frame rate was not good, and a lot of people really tried to get into this game but simply couldn't because of the performance, that barrier to entry will tumble on September 15th, allowing an entirely new crop of people to experience for themselves an experience that I genuinely believe is incomparable. There is nothing else like this, and when you're done with it, you're left with this black hole at the center of you, and you're desperate to fill it with games or books or movies that will give you the same high. You will never fill it, making the Outer Wilds ending both euphoric and melancholic at the same time. If you haven't played it yet, please don't look anything up. The less you know about it, the better. Just go out and buy it. Trust me, you'll thank me later. Finally, the only delay announcement for this week is kind of a bummer. Warhammer 40k Darktide has slipped from its planned September release and will now release on November 30th, but it gets worse. It was meant to ship for both PC and Xbox at the same time. Now the PC version will ship first, with the Xbox version to arrive at some point after that. No date yet. Developer Fat Shark took to Twitter to make the announcement, saying they needed, quote, more time to improve stability, performance, and to mature key systems, end quote. When I played the game back in June, I definitely encountered some bugs, so obviously more time was needed to iron all of those out, I guess. That's a bummer, since I was super pumped to jump into this in September. The consolation prize is that Fat Shark did announce some beta testing commencing soon-ish. You can sign up for those over on their website. So what came out last week? Well, there was some cool stuff actually. Did you guys see how crazy Multiverses went? This thing launched last week, and just on Steam alone it peaked at 150,000 concurrent players, which is an absolutely absurd figure for a fighting game, especially one that's an all-new IP. Yeah, it's built on existing characters, but the game itself is brand new. And to achieve those sorts of numbers is low-key crazy. Obviously, being free-to-play helps make that possible, so the question becomes, is this likely to go the distance, or is it just a bit of launch week sizzle? If reviews are anything to go by, it's probably going to be the former. It currently sits at a very positive 90% on Steam with over 40,000 reviews in, so that's awesome. Critics too are impressed, putting it at a strong 80 on OpenCritic. IGN scored this one an 8 out of 10, saying, quote, Multiverses may not be a must-play at social gatherings, but its refreshing team-based battles make it a great platform fighter online, end quote. Press Start was similarly impressed, scoring it an 8 out of 10 and saying, quote, it combines a solid fighting system with an excellent starting roster of characters to offer a platforming fighter like no other. There are some kinks to be ironed out, but Multiverses is in a prime position to hit the ground running, end quote. I'm hearing rumblings about cool stuff happening at EVO for this one, so I very much expect this one to try and carve out a place on the tournament scene as well. Bear and Breakfast was one that I only discovered last week, but since then I've been hearing about it all over the intertubes. This is a cutesy hotel management game where you play as a bear and you're running a bed and breakfast, and it's got a gorgeous art style, and it's apparently really well written and funny, and it's just ticking boxes all over the place. Steam users are very happy. It's sitting at a very positive 89. Critics are also giving this one the nod, with it sitting at a strong 81 on OpenCritic. The Gamer scored it a 4 out of 5, saying, quote, Bear and Breakfast is an in-depth management sim that is all too easy to enjoy for hours on end. There's plenty of quirky humor alongside an unfolding story filled with mysterious undertones, gorgeous 2D graphics, and classic genre goodness, end quote. By the way, if you want to hear more about this one, we talked about it at length during the most recent episode of the Friends Per Second podcast, since both Lucy and Tam played a bunch of it and loved it. I'll leave a timestamp link to that below the like button. XENOBLADE Chronicles 3, the game I desperately tried to review, but Papa Nintendo said no. The good news though is that XENOBLADE 3 rules, apparently. Reviews for this one hit last week and were universally positive, with all of them celebrating the game's massive, unique world, its excellent combat, and its strong cast of characters. Yes, the voice lines in combat are as spammy as ever, but would you want it any other way? I wouldn't. Critics are largely unbothered by these minor shortcomings, putting it at a mighty 88 on OpenCritic. Eurogamer deemed this one essential, saying, quote, Monolith Soft closes out its loosely connected trilogy of epic RPGs with its most adaptable, malleable, and high-spirited adventure yet, end quote. Game Informer were pretty much the only middle-of-the-road review I saw. They scored the game a 7.3, saying, quote, XENOBLADE Chronicles 3 is a double-edged sword that needs a bit more sharpening, end quote. Regardless, you are looking at a minimum of 100 hours to get through this one, with more meandering playthroughs tending towards the 150-hour mark. So if you're gonna do this, then you better clear your schedule for like the next month or whatever, because it's big. So what's coming out this week? Yo, nothing. Oh man, I don't think I can recall a week in the entire 18-month history of this show that is as bleak on the release front. The two indie titles releasing this week couldn't have planned it any better, as they aren't competing with any major offerings this week. The spotlight is entirely on them and them alone, so that's kind of nice. nice. The first of the two titles is called South of the Circle, which launches on all platforms on the 3rd. This is from developer State of Play, and they describe it as, quote, an emotional narrative experience exploring the relationship between Peter and Clara, Cambridge academics caught up in the political conflict of the Cold War. The story focuses on the weight of life choices between career, true love, and the desire to keep our promises, end quote. I actually quite like the art style for this one. It's really got something going for it. I really don't know any more about it, but I wish the developers all the best. Hopefully it's great. One title I do know something about is Turbo Golf Racing, which launches on both PC and Xbox on the 4th. I actually played this one during the Steam Next Fest. I liked it, but I didn't love it. I didn't spend a huge amount of time with it, but I felt the physics model just wasn't grabbing me the same way that Rocket League immediately did. However, I was playing this one solo, and I suspect the best way to play it will be with a bunch of friends, so you can just fuck around and try to mess with each other's balls. Yep, I said it. Hey, put this on your radar. I know you've come to expect a certain type of game from this segment, usually a 2D action game with Souls-like elements, so today we're bucking the trend with Railbound. This is a puzzle game that's all about connecting carriages by manipulating track lines. It's simple, at least at first, but it does get more tricky as you get further into it. What remains constant is the chill factor. The soundtrack, the muted clicks of the tracks as you manipulate them. This whole thing is designed to chill you out, and I'm into that more and more these days. Games like Power Wash Simulator and Dorf Romantic have been such a vibe to play through after a big week, and I can totally see this one fitting into that same niche, supporting either zen-like zone outs or great fodder for times when you want something else running on a second monitor. Railbound is confirmed for both PC and mobile devices actually, but if you want to check it out on Steam, you can find it on my Steam Curator page, which also has links to all the other put this on your radar titles I've profiled before. I'll leave a link to all of that below the like button. Sort of free stuff time now, and we're in the first week of a new month, so it's time to get that bread. And by bread, I mean video games, I think? I'm not sure. Regardless, Epic are now giving away your next chore core fix in the form of Lawnmower Simulator. True story, this game is getting a physical release, and the Australian distributor for that has set up a stream where you can watch grass grow. Sadly, the grass is not in a hot tub, so I don't expect it to hit big numbers in this current stream meta. Regardless, I'll leave a link to that stream below. Go by, show it some love, they'd love that. On August 5th, there'll be a new game on offer from Epic, Unrailed. Man, we're really on a railway bent this week. First put this on your radar and now this. To be honest, I hadn't actually heard of this before, but having watched some gameplay, I'm like, hey, this looks super cool. It's a co-op game where you have to build the track as the train slowly advances, and it just looks really clever and fun. Steam reviews for this one are 93% very positive, by the way, so clearly there's something there. Grab it free from August 5th. So how about Twitch Prime? If you're an Amazon Prime or Twitch Prime subscriber, they are the same thing, by the way, you can now get your hands on a few sort of free titles, including Beasts of MARAVILLA Island, which is kind of like Pokemon Snap, but not. Recompile is a Metroidvania set inside the mainframe. Looks kind of cool though. The big one though is STARCRAFT Remastered, the updated edition of Blizzard's seminal strategy masterpiece that pretty much birthed esports and all of those videos of Korean pros operating at like 3000 APM. Very scary stuff. We covered off Game Pass last week, but what about them games with gold? It feels like this program is wrapping up, by the way, as it was only recently that Microsoft announced that soon Games with Gold will no longer include any Xbox 360 games, and they won't be adding any additional Xbox One games to compensate. If this is to be among the last of the 360 offerings, then at least it's going down fighting, because this month you can get your hands on Saints Row 2, a timely offering no doubt intended to get people hyped for the upcoming reboot. The other 360 game is Monaco, which is a co-op heist game. Finally, for Xbox One, you get Scourgebringer, which is an action roguelike platformer, as well as Calico, which is a game about rebuilding a rundown cat cafe. Man, people are really cat crazy this month, aren't they? Sony ponies, you're up, and can I just say, you guys are eating well this month. So PS Plus has 3 tiers now. The base tier you're probably already subscribed to gives you 3 sort of free games each month. The first is Little Nightmares for PS4. Immersive, atmospheric little adventure game. Fantastic if you're in the mood for that sort of thing. If you're up for something a little more freewheeling, then Tony Hawk 1 and 2 remasters are included for both PS4 and PS5. 2 of the few perfect video games, Tony Hawk 1 and 2 have only aged like fine wine since their release back in the day, and this glorious remaster unearths all of that goodness with aplomb. Rest in peace, Vicarious Visions. You will be missed as you are subsumed into the great Blizzard hive mind. Finally, Yakuza Like a Dragon is the first game in the new post-Kiryu story arc, and it too is coming to PS Plus subscribers for both PS4 and PS5. That's not all though, the entire Yakuza back catalogue is arriving on PS Plus Extra, which is the second tier, either really soon or in the coming months. So if you have a spare 500 or so hours to get through the 7 games, then a PS Plus Extra subscription will be all you need. Our feel-good story for the week is one of the coolest things I've ever seen. So firstly, there's this band called The 900, who are a Tony Hawk cover band. They only play tracks from Tony Hawk games. Now I'm sorry, but that is fucking sick, and I can't believe I'm only hearing about this now. Anyway, at a show last week, they had a surprise guest appearance. Can you guess who it was?
We bring you Mr. Tony Hawk!
What's up, London? How are ya?
That's right, Superman himself rocked up to rock out with his deck out, and the crowd were absolutely loving it. Tony looked like he was having a good time as well. Dude, I cannot imagine how fucking awesome it would be to have a giant Tony Hawk karaoke party featuring actual Tony Hawk. This feels like one of those Woodstock moments that these people will tell their grandkids about, and you love to see it. Alright nerds, that's a wrap for the show. Thanks again for stopping by. Do be sure to hit the like button if you had a good time, subscribe, notification bell, ding in, all that jazz. No reviews this week, but I'm working on 2 big ones for next week, so stay tuned for those. Have a fantastic week. See you next time. As I mentioned earlier, Squarespace have re-signed to the channel for another 12 months. Very appreciative of that support, that is amazing. Squarespace are helping me turn my passion into a career, and that's what they do for a lot of people, because if you want to turn your passion into a career, then a website is a really good place to start. Maybe you want to start writing. Squarespace lets you create a professional looking blog in minutes so you can immediately begin publishing your work and sharing it around. Maybe you want to open an online store and start selling stuff you've made or you're importing. Squarespace lets you set up online storefronts with ease, and they look fantastic, super professional, and they're also backed by end-to-end e-commerce features so you can start taking and managing payments in no time. Maybe you want to create a community page for your Halo clan or your local chess club. Squarespace can handle that too, as it's got an event scheduler that allows you to organize and invite people to stuff you want to do. Squarespace does it all. It's a one-stop shop for that next thing you want to do with your hobby, your career, or just because you feel like it. To get started, visit squarespace.com, and if you want to get serious, visit squarespace.com/skillup to get 10% off your first purchase of a website or a domain name. Thanks Squarespace for sponsoring the video, and thank you for watching it.